everyone. I'm your host, Eric Swartz, Web3 tycoon and head of Web3 at Sterlington. Please join me in welcoming my close friend, Sommelier, finance, head of operations, and SS Ventures founder, Stephanie Vaughan. Please introduce yourself to the audience, Stephanie. Marines, investment banking, startups, and now Web3 projects. How do you do it?
So I started my career going to the Naval Academy, and then I went into the Marine Corps. After that, I went to business school and went to Columbia Business School, and then started working in M&A, like investment banking. Transitioned from that to marketplace lending, kind of saw everything from marketplace lending, either rolling up, being sold, or just like, going out of business. And I saw the sort of future of digital finance as everything that, was securitized at that time could be tokenized. And you could really do that true peer-to-peer lending, which was never accomplished in marketplace lending, because they end up sort of going to warehouse like line of credits, et cetera, looking for cheaper capital, and then ended up becoming banks. So in that way, they really weren't innovative. So I saw the blockchain technology sort of taking off. I went from that into doing my own kind of ICO advisory with a partner, writing for Lending Times, writing for Blockchain Times, and then started working with David Chom on a privacy messaging project. David Chom's the inventor of digital cash and the inventor of mixed networks. After about 3 years with David, after we launched the BetaNet, I decided it was time to go back to focusing on finance side, digital assets, which is why I initially went into blockchain. Started working with Zakian Sommelier, which is it's really a platform. It doesn't fit anywhere really in the finance space. The closest thing would be kind of like a decentralized hedge fund, but it allows anybody to decentralize a strategy. So yeah, that's
Amazing.
sort of background all the way to today.
Well, it's great to hear. And I mean, I hadn't known that you had been at the Naval Academy previously, so thank you for your service. I knew you were a Marine, and I hear you're always a Marine. You don't
Yeah,
just
once a Marine, always you're never a yeah.
that's what so I love it. So
You never
really
say former Marine.
that's I was definitely super careful about that one. I
Yes.
and I it's just such an incredible background. I think one thing I would like to kind of hone in on is just the fact that you took your service, transitioned to investment banking, like what, and then now we're in a very similar kind of financial structure. I mean, granted, it's a different way mechanism, but not a particularly different liquidity need that we're satisfying. So what I would love to know is just like how your time in service affected and impacts kind of like the way you think about these protocols and the way you think about finance generally.
It's interesting. There's like a couple different ways I think that it's maybe affected me. One, my major was in quantitative economics, which is like essentially operations analysis, which the military actually invented during World War II. And like kind of Monte Carlo simulations, and running these simulations were to run simulations on different logistics like that they did during World War II. And now like run different simulations on war games. And so I worked with General Donahue as a general's aide, and he was responsible for the force structure review group in the Marine Corps, which downsized the force at the time, and this is in 2011. And so there's different war games. We had 2 courses of action that we ran and used these kind of this math and these simulations. It's used in finance as well, like in order to look at, different strategies, the same kind of math, the same kind of statistics, but, a very different outcome, not to optimize a war game, but to optimize, a financial strategy. So that's one way I would say it's affected me. The other way, like, what's the question? Like, how do I look at, like, finance? I guess, like, the other way is military, like, acquisitions are very kind of slow moving, and very tied to a POM cycle, which is like a 6-year cycle that works with the Pentagon as far as funding in Congress. Like, things in finance are very quick, and so it's given me a very different perspective, like, for where, like, you don't work on something that's kind of like has this funding that you're fighting for to keep the funding, but you are, like, truly seeing, like, in the startup world, the kind of the closest thing to, this, like, efficiency, or like that we all, talk about within the economy. You either make it or the company dies, because it's not a good product. Yeah.
It's definitely
So
much faster, I would imagine, that's for sure.
it's
And
much
having
faster. It's not like unlimited funding, and it's not like, and this decision-making process that isn't, like, tied to what is capitalism. Yeah. So
that's definitely true. Although one thing I'll say is just that unfortunately some people their decisions aren't tied to capitalism either. But I agree with the sentiment 100%. I think that what's super interesting, I mean, honestly, like comparing just hearing what you said and comparing it is just the speed you must have gone through 2 levels of kind of very I don't know what you would call it, like exponentized speed increases, like going from the military to finance and then also going into Web3 from traditional finance. So what has that been like? And I, as someone who kind of shares at least part of that struggle with you, I can totally relate. So excited to hear your thoughts on it.
well, I would say going from the military to finance is, very different. You're essentially going from a society where, they're checking, if you go to the doctor, the dentist, or you had your vaccines, almost extreme socialism to like, capitalism. Every person's out for themselves, every company's out for themselves, every person's, utility maximizing, every company's profit maximizing. Getting used to that is very shocking and different, and takes a while. Um, and people from the military kind of have their groups, like, to support one another, like, through this transition. Going into digital finance is a little bit different in the fact that, like, it's interesting to see, because you have the tech side of it, and then you have the finance side of it, and you watch a lot of tech people reinvent things that you already know exist within finance, or like have existed for a long time, and they're sort of like imagining it for the first time, like, wow, you could, lend, one person can lend to another, and you're like, wow, there's a whole industry, off of that, or like you could have interest rates on a loan, and you're like, I know. Yeah, like, and they're kind of discovering what finance is for the first time in a lot of things, which I think is interesting, and then writing it off as something new, and then running into the same problems, like that, finance has already kind of run into over, centuries. And so that's interesting to see. But the pace at which it moves, Legally, I think is what you're talking about, which is just insane. And like the kind of whiplash back to Ripple not being a security is got to be like shocking to you, probably. It's like we went years with this whole like everything has to be sufficiently decentralized to now like it's like we're going all the way back like to the beginning. um where these are digital assets are treated differently, and like the regulation will be different. And so I think it's exciting in that way, like the legal aspect, and then how you can kind of like create and structure these products now using this technology, which like is really like I think what will, once we figure out like some of the major issues within DeFi, which will be the future of finance.
100% agree. I especially with Ripple is like I mean, it's shocking in an everything positive kind of way. That's what I'll say. Like,
Yes, it.
I wasn't
What
hopeful
we,
for this outcome, but I mean, I'll take it all day, every day. Like, that's exactly what we needed. I mean,
I mean, if Ripple isn't a security, what is a security? Like, I mean, I don't like. It's
that
crazy.
I agree with you. I think it has far reaching. First of all, it has far reaching like it has very far reaching precedential value, but it also chills a lot of this activity at the regulators because now they have a sense, listen, like the judiciary doesn't agree with us, the legislative doesn't agree with us, doesn't seem like the president agrees with us. So we should probably get our act in order and start to get in line because clearly the rest of the government of the United States of America doesn't agree with us. And so we're off base in that way. And I would say Gary Gensler needed that. Like he needed a real wake up call. Like, hey, the entire government doesn't agree with you, Mr. Gary Gensler, because he was out of control. And that's what happens when you get a little bit too far afield. Like when like if you get, and I'm not saying what Gary's doing was by the law incorrect because I would have said the same exact thing he was saying up until now. I mean, I think his analysis is correct, but it's more about the realities of the future of finance. And he's bucking up against those realities and finding out that, hey, there's an industry here. And by the way, there's an industry with support at the highest levels of government and the judiciary. So like now you sir need to really rein it in. And I think that's what we're about to see happen.
And go after really the people that are doing like bad things. Like it's not like this whole industry is bad. Like we I mean, it's crazy that what you see in the news, like versus the people that you work with. Like I just talked to Chris like in a podcast, a veteran podcast the other day from Coin Fund, and to sit there and say that you and me and Chris are all criminals like working in crypto, like trying to push fentanyl, like is just insane. And I think like Ripple has really kind of now will hopefully put the like the SEC can go after the bad actors, the people that are manipulating like the markets here, the people that are like doing wrong things to hurt people, not just trying to create the future of finance, not just working in a good way with good intentions. Yeah.
I 100% agree with everything you just said, and I love Chris, and I am super close with the Coin Fund guys too. And what I would say is just like there's a reason. I think first of all, we have been so over, I don't know what like dominated by people who either were scammers or are scammers or some, and for whatever reason, like a big part of the reason why we have this podcast is to stop that, because it needs to be stopped, because really we have a whole bunch of people just kind of on the attention economy essentially ruining an industry that has incredible amounts of utility. Like that's kind of what's happened. There's like some folks that have kind of done the wrong thing for the wrong reasons, just like they do in every market. And I agree with you. I think the SEC needs to double down and refocus its energies on exactly that. As the crime statistics go up, where is that enforcement energy going? Like it's really just misallocated. So I couldn't agree more. And I'm just super excited that we actually got this outcome because frankly, I wasn't that hopeful for it. And so I'm just like elated that we did get it. I mean, it would the icing on the cake would be the ETF, but I don't even know if I really care as much anymore. Like at this point, they took so long with the ETF that its relevance is kind of being erased at the
Yeah.
same time. And so nothing but smiles from me on my end, and so excited for what you guys are building because I think it is incredible. And after having met Zaki in person and you in person for ETH Denver, it was just such an incredible conversation. So much like great vibes from all your conversations, and just generally the way you guys work together is incredible. Would love to hear more about Som and the incredible technologies that you guys have built.
Yeah. So Som is a like platform to really decentralize strategies at every level. So if anybody has, or a group of people have a strategy that they want to sell, or not sell, rather like want to release, like in a smart contract, Som can provide this like protocol to do so. So the way let me go through the way that it works and try to do it in a simple way. So there's a team called Seven Seas, which I'm part of, and Seven Seas is a strategy team. Seven Seas has launched the biggest strategy so far on the Som platform, which now we have. It's actually launched all the strategies with partners, but it's launched the biggest strategies itself, which is real yield ETH, real yield USD, and like real yield BTC just came out, and so Seven Seas, either itself or with partners, will take a signal, pass that signal to a group of validators on the Som platform. The validators will like decide that, look at the signal and see that it's not a malicious signal. And then they will pass the signal across a bridge to a smart contract on Ethereum, and the smart contract on Ethereum will execute the trade. So Som is a Cosmos chain, like layer one chain, but all of the contracts so far are on Ethereum. And I know, one of your kind of questions coming up is about like, are we going to continue on Ethereum? We're going to end up going multi-chain, and instead of just using our own bridge, which we've been using, which is like updated from the Gravity bridge, we are going to be using Axelar, and we've talked about that and kind of gone public with everything there, and we'll be able to do strategies on multiple different chains. But right now, most of the liquidity within the ecosystem is on Ethereum, and so that's like kind of where we've been focusing, and where our strategies have really gained volume so far. So Seven Seas is a quant team, and Seven Seas works with other quant teams who are consultants. Like for Seven Seas, Define Logic is one of them. Like multiple other strategies that we've launched. DeFi Stars is another one that has like an index type strategy, and it's in BVI, and it doesn't really fall under an investment advisor because we don't hold custody of the assets. All Seven Seas does is send, a signal, like a quant signal here. And and send that signal, to the Som platform right now. But it could send it to other platforms that could decentralize the strategy. So where our strategies, or where Soms plus 7Cs differ really from something like Yearn, is our vaults are intelligent vaults, or you can call them, dynamic vaults. And it solves the issue where you have to kind of create then a whole nother smart contract in order to like change the strategy as the world change. Because the team behind the strategy, the team, like the data scientist, as they see, a strategy going stale, can then shift the strategy or find the best yields. That's why we call it like real yield USD or real yield, ETH. Like they're always going to get the best yields because they can shift to where they are. They don't have to just run one strategy, getting yields from one area and then another area. They can make decisions and shift and do so in a decentralized way, because you have this set of validators, you have a governance set that stops them in a lot of ways from doing, malicious things, can make other decisions, can take over. It's not like the team can, not like a hedge fund where they can, put it all in Doge, or, put it all in, long BTC. Like they can't make those big decisions because they are limited by the governance, by the validators and the technology that we built. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that
Really went
makes
on
total sense. And
there.
I think the way for people to think about it is like each individual strategy is somewhat like an exchange traded fund in a lot of ways. And that's kind of how I analogize systems like this and
Yeah.
think about them, because of the amount of liquidity that you guys get as a part of Web3, as opposed to like otherwise I would liken it to more like being like assisting with the placement process for private funds, but I don't think it actually is that way, because I think the on-chain element of it kind of creates like this public and fully decentralized piece that is more like a public ETF with a manager that could be replaced by like a hostile takeover, for instance. Like some people think GBTC may undergo in the near future, but let's see what
Oh,
happens there.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Although that is a trust, of course. But similar mechanics. Like there is, so I think that's what I really like about Som's strategy, because the difference being that like if you feel strongly and the community supports your opinion, like the validators being the community here, like you can change things. You can, but you all get to decide and you all get to invest on the basis of this collective decision. And it's much more like an investment club than a traditional fund would operate, which is always, first of all, very interesting for securities law purposes, but also it's a very different way of investing. Like, because like when I say ETF, what I want to say is like it's not a managed ETF. It's more like maybe what the right word is, like index, like you said. Because like, but then
Well,
when
I
you
mean, I
say,
think it's a mix. It's not really an index or I mean, there's an article I saw in CoinDesk the other day about, structured products. It's not really an index because there is a team, right, that can make the decisions behind it. But they are decentralized. They're limited in certain ways, like unlike an ETF, but the it is similar to an ETF. I would say like real yield USD could be compared to the ETF. I think it's GOVT, which is a treasury ETF that's finding the best yields, trading in and out of treasuries. So
and there's no
it
reason
is
why
similar.
it couldn't
Yeah.
be like a product that sits in between the two and has a different cost. Because yeah, like at
Yeah.
the end of the day, like it's like what I think of, and it's so interesting because I'll also say it's very similar to how I think about projects now, and how in light of Ripple, like this is just a different asset class. It's experimental, and therefore there's a discounted yield that the managers are receiving, but it doesn't have to be subject to the same type of regulatory requirements as your typical business like this, because people have accepted that this is an experiment. And that,
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like they're not holding the kind of, yeah, it is, well, there's the platform too that provides a service that needs to be paid. And then there's the quant team that sends the signals, which is kind of provides two layers. But yeah, I mean, it's so that's why I said it doesn't really quite fit anywhere within finance today. And I'm careful to kind of make any, like direct like comparison. And we don't hold, there's no custody like for the people that are, these making these, sending these signals. And then there's no nothing blocking people from taking their money in or putting money in or putting money out of these smart contracts. Like they're free to kind of, move in and out.
withdraws, yeah, withdraw at
Yeah.
will,
And
which
so
is,
it's like, which is different, than traditional finance here. And so I think it's interesting in that way. And we'll, you know, but this is the first kind of product like this, and it solves that issue where you then would have to create like a new vault like each time.
yeah. And
Yeah.
another piece that, like, so would love to run through kind of successes, challenges that you guys have had, and also just drill down a bit more on um the management components and like how you guys are making those decisions in a decentralized way, because I think that's just super interesting. And I'm like super laser beam focused on what you guys are doing. I think it's super innovative because like I can't tell you the amount of times that I structure something as a fund, even though people really prefer a decentralized structure because it's just more compliant, like on its face. But I think
Yes.
now in light of this decision, I might not think that way. Like I think I
Yeah.
actually kind of changed the way I think about that a lot, because first of all, like as long as we can make our product distinct enough from what currently exists, which I think you already have, Steph, like in the course of this conversation, really explained why it's so different. Because at the end of the day, I mean, with validators like the quality of validator that we're talking about, the probably just like leading quant funds in all of Web3, knowing Zucky's background and network, like that's incredible. You would never get that at a traditional fund for these rates. Like you just wouldn't. So it's actually it's not simply it's a better product, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not, and taking like smart
It's
contract
not
risk.
a decentralized fund. Yeah, it's not like, it's just, it is a way to decentralize a strategy. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean all, because and that's also true because a fund is very different. You can't, you the difference, and that's, we should drill down on that too, because like the difference between a fund is like you have full allocation responsibility, whereas this is more like uh I guess what I would liken it to is like more like a managed account, but but it's not
It's
entirely
not
like
managed.
it's
Yeah,
not
it's like,
entirely like a managed account either, because like even though managed accounts do have like a little bit more strict like requirements sometimes, almost like because of like the underlying trusts that are investing in them, they have requirements. Usually that's why you end up with like that structure. But what I think is super different is that there are parameters that can't even override, and that's
yeah.
just different. Like that's the I haven't really seen a financial product quite like this, and I think you're right. Like because it's very different to say you would have to launch a new strategy in many cases where folks might have been able to just reallocate or reportion the fund, but that makes this a very different type of tool. And so I think that that's super interesting. And then it also means that you want to have a lot more conviction in the assets within the basket, like at the outset. And you also want to be thoughtful about kind of like selecting your strategy at the outset because it won't change as much.
Yeah, I mean, people can select like, it's up to anyone. Some is just the platform here. Other people can build different interfaces for some. Other people, can build whatever strategies they want on some. They could offer them, privately. They could offer them publicly. And like you can come to a some website, like we have one right now run by Bayance, which is an Estonian team, and choose, which basket of, products best fits like what your risk is. But like there's nothing kind of stopping you from going in and out of different things.
There's a lot more limitations on the strategies than a traditional fund would have, but that actually is kind of a gift, right? Like in many ways, like that's exactly what people who are buying these products, which are in many ways very different than traditional fund products would be, or even like SPV type products where you have like a very specific subset of assets, is you have the ability to have some management and then and within the parameters kind of set out by the strategy at the initiation of the strategy, but you also have hard limitations on changes that can be made, which give the holder a lot more power in this ecosystem and certainty as to kind of what will be in the basket.
Yeah, definitely.
So some of the bigger challenges that Sam has kind of experienced, and maybe some of those probably relate to like being on in the Cosmos ecosystem and still yet being like an Ethereum, a largely Ethereum serving product. Would love to hear kind of what that's been like and maybe the power that it gives you guys as like a DApp specific protocol and those types of things.
I mean, I think it's like a lot of people assume because like Ozaki has such a reputation within Cosmos, like, this is a Cosmos project, this is your Cosmos strategies. And so it take a little while to kind of overcome that and say, look, these are strategies like that are smart contracts like on Ethereum. And so I think like, now we've established ourselves in that space. And people kind of recognize us more like in these different pools and where, our products sit. And like as we like grow in TVL, like we just hit 21 million. And, as we like as we kind of mature as a project and as we kind of announced like going multi-chain, I do think that there are going to be opportunities like within the Cosmos ecosystem, where there are going to be strategy opportunities and to kind of come back there and then, be able to execute there on different strategies is coming very soon. Like just like as osmosis kind of grows, and there's more liquidity within the Cosmos ecosystem.
And the
Yeah.
DYDX like move will certainly be interesting.
Yes.
We're all looking out for that for Sam as well. And I know that will
Exactly.
be
USDX. Yeah. And USDC and everything that Jelena is working on with Noble, like there's just so much more money I think that will kind of come over to Cosmos, like to all the different chains over here, and then allow there to be strategies built. Yeah, so I think we're well positioned to do that, of course, because it's much easier to not like bridge the yeah. Uh, to have to bridge to send the signal. So
absolutely. And I mean, just to close it out, and I know we've mentioned Zucky a couple times, but I want to give everyone kind of like the full background on him and just to say that you guys work really well together. I mean, the mentorship that you get from Zucky, I think is incredible, especially for someone as successful as Zucky. And I think it's really a credit to the project and a credit to your performance as a team member, um, how much he values you and how much together you guys will soon accomplish. And I'm really excited to see that and would love to hear like your view on like seeking out mentorship in Web3 because it's not that easy for everyone and how you were successful in doing that would be super helpful for the audience, as I know a lot of people are looking to do half as well or even a quarter as well in the near term, and they would love that advice as they do it.
sure. So It's been like, it's amazing. And I love working with Zaki and Christy, who's the other co-founder of Sommelier. And both of them are just incredible people and incredible mentors, like to imagine the system. And like, it's been, amazing to kind of, work and help build, the operational side, build out seven C's, like, um, and really, the quant team here, and then like see where, we can like kind of take that company now. But where other people can find mentorship, I mean, I'd say, there's people everywhere willing to help people like Zaki. I think like, Zaki's involved in lots of different projects in the Cosmos ecosystem. I think in Cosmos, there's endless opportunities, endless projects, and just endless people working on things. I'd say, there's hackathons, there's different conferences. I would focus mostly on ecosystems like Ethereum or Cosmos, or, big kind of ecosystems that have a lot of projects within them. Um, if people are looking for mentorships and teams to join, I mean, things shift obviously very fast, as you said, like within crypto, like for where these different groups are and where different, kind of money comes in. But um, Ethereum has been a clear kind of, top like leader, where people have been building on it for a number of years now, is a pretty safe bet. So, I mean, go to different hackathons, different conferences. There's a conference going on in Paris right now. A lot of people are at, meet people and just start working on different ideas to how to, improve the network and like, see what people are already doing. Twitter's a great place too to find out information. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think that Web3 is actually a pretty open community, and if you want to seek out that mentorship, it does exist, even at the very highest levels, with founders of what are kind of like the premier blockchains in the space, like Cosmos, like Zucky, and like Steph herself. Like with those types of solid leaders in place, like we really do have access to them. It's not like other industries, because we're nascent, they're still building, and that's really exciting. And I think there's very few spaces that operate that way, where they have sort of the top talent as readily available for mentorship and for teaching purposes. And I think it's really been a boon to our ability to bring on top engineers, because if without you guys, I mean, that I feel like this whole thing kind of just pauses, right? Like if you don't get the top engineering talent from the top schools, you really aren't going to be the future of anything. And it's really people like Zucky and people and teams like the SOM team that make that happen. Because the quants that we're talking about can go anywhere. They can go to Goldman Sachs, they can go to JP Morgan, they can go to pick your poison. Any Chicago prop shop of your choice.
Yeah.
And but they're choosing to be here, and there's a reason for that. And I think people should take note, because there's a reason, there's something to all that, and creating good mentorship environments with really, really team oriented management teams is critical. And I couldn't say that Som is probably the most evident to me of that, and like bringing so many different types of backgrounds together. And Zucky's just really great team builder. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming on, Steph. It was incredible. I think people are going to love it. And Web3, we hope you'll join us next week to continue our journey unraveling the mysteries and exploring the limitless possibilities of the new internet.